Hey, 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 it's Rebecca, and you're listening to Resilient by Design. Okay, this year I'm going to do things a little bit differently. If you've been following this podcast for the last, oh my goodness, is this the second Christmas? I don't know. For the last couple of years, you will know that I like to do a year in review podcast. It's an end of year review that I walk you through exactly what I do each year to review how things went in my business, and then to strategically plan for the next coming year. But it's actually a lot of things. And so what I decided to do this year is split it up into two parts. So today you're going to get part one of my year-end review, and it's going to be financial. Today, I'm going to walk you through the end-of-year financial review that I do. And then in the second part, we will get into the rest of the review, the other elements that make up the review of how the year went. A little bit of finances in that too, but it's a little bit more about business and goals and people and vision and planning then for the year ahead. So here we go.
All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business.
Are you looking to expand your network, gain momentum in your business, and be around your tribe of designers or decorators or architects? If you answered yes, then go check out the Collective Workspace. They offer a range of private office suites, flex workspaces, boardroom rentals, and many more perks, along with a trade-only design resource library. Oh, and did I mention a boutique gym? Their flagship space is located in the heart of Toronto. I am here right now in the Design District, with a second location opening up this fall in Mississauga. Go check them out at thecollectiveto.com or go on Instagram at The Collective Workspace, your tour, or take advantage of their free 3-day pass. Okay, so finances. Oh, everybody's favorite topic. Hold on, I gotta get comfortable here because this is an intense one. No, it's not really intense, but I can tell you this is something that I didn't always do. I really had no concept of the financials in my business at all for many, many years. So this is pretty crazy to think that I'm doing a podcast teaching other people how to review your financials from the year. Again, I'm going to just preface this podcast by saying that I'm not an accountant. I am not a bookkeeper. You still need to check with your chartered accountants and the professionals to look at the actual numbers. I'm just going to guide you through somewhat of a checklist of the things that I like to look at and that I encourage you to look at, so that when you go into planning for the year ahead, you really have a better sense of where your company is at financially and how you did. So, and I want to really go through some items are a little bit more simplistic, and you may already do them. I can tell you that all the things I'm teaching you today, I did not do 4 years ago. Like not a single one, including the first one, which is going to blow your mind. But hey, there's probably people out there who are like I was. And so I just want you to know that you are not alone. And if some of these terms that I talk about, I will try my best to really be detailed and specific in my descriptions of these items. But if you're not sure and you still don't get it, don't worry about it. That is completely normal. If you are somebody who's like me and did not grow up really passionate about numbers, I'm trying to have a positive mindset. Positive mindset. I keep turning my head from the microphone, and that's no good because I've got my notes in front of me for my end of year financial review, I want to make sure I capture everything. So I keep turning my head. I'll try not to do that because the sound goes all funny on me. See, there you go. Okay. Don't worry if you don't know. You can also Google things, ask a friend. But I can tell you I still have so much to learn. Here we go. So at the end of the year, or near, I would say towards the end of November, is when I decide, okay, I need to plan a day to look at the year financials. I need to go through everything and make sure that I've got all my ducks in a row, and I want to review how I did. I want to review the projects that I had, how much money they brought in, the margins on things, and understand how we've done financially. So what I like to do is set aside half a day, excuse me, get some water, or a day, depending on if I have someone to help me. So this year I have Mara Lee, my operations manager. And so fortunately, she'll have run all the numbers and is able to sort of present me with things and makes it go a lot faster. In the past, I've had an accountant helping with this, but really the bulk of the work I did myself. So I would say set yourself up for half a day. If it's not enough, then just find another half day somewhere. Okay, so here are the things. I'm going to walk you through all the things that I recommend you do at the end of the year. The first thing is, it's going to sound silly to people who have been in business forever, and it sounds so obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me, and I didn't always do it, and it's reconcile the books, right? It's basically fancy accounting language that just means making sure that all your bank transactions and that the transactions entered on your profit and loss statement match, right? I use an accountant for this, or a bookkeeper. Sorry, I use our bookkeeper for this. I do not do this myself. You can use QuickBooks online or Design Docs or even just Excel to track it. But you want to track the business revenue and the expenses throughout the year and make sure everything that is purchased shows up on the credit card and the bank statements. To be honest, it's a tedious task. I can't even imagine doing it myself. I don't really even know what that really truly means. I'm going to be completely honest with you. All I know is that if your books aren't reconciled, this exercise is very hard to do, this whole year in review. So get someone to help you to reconcile the books. Also, that way you can find out if you owe any taxes. If you've ever listened to me give a workshop, I often will share that for many years I was in the red, which is an accounting term, which essentially means you owe back taxes or you owe the government, right? Basically, well, not just that. Sorry. It also means your company is not making money. It's the opposite of profit. It's called loss. So reconcile the books so you have a full, complete understanding of where you're at. Have your accountant or bookkeeper do it. I do recommend that this is done in advance of your half-day sit-down. I think this should be done monthly. And if you're not in the habit, then find a bookkeeper who can help you get into that habit. It is something that will be a game changer for you in understanding your financials and understanding how much of the money is yours, how much still has to go out, and it's really powerful. So reconcile the books. Okay, before you do this exercise, reconcile the books. Then, once they are reconciled, I want you, number 2, to review your profit and loss statement. Some people call this a P&L. So here are some questions that you can think about as you review. 1, what were your total sales for the year? And if you set a goal, did you hit it? 2, did your sales increase or decrease from the previous year? And what does that tell you? I can tell you that in 2020, when the pandemic hit, our sales decreased drastically. So now our 2021 profit and loss looks like amazing compared to the prior year because 2020 was such a crap year for us. We got a lot of projects, but that was at the end of the year. So that profit, all those projects that signed on towards the end of 2020 really didn't come in until 2021. So it's a little bit bogus given the pandemic, but in general, you do want to look at the last year. I always say look back a couple of years just so you can kind of see what the trends are because it can tell you something. Also, when you look at your expenses, are there any areas that you spent more than expected? If anybody here uses design docs, as we do, it's not called a profit and loss. It's called your income statement. Same thing, same concept. It looks at your total sales, cost of goods, all of the sales that are from your fees, where all the revenue comes from, and then it breaks down all your expenses based on the categories that you have created. But this is a part I don't like, but you got to do it. Look at your expenses and highlight any areas that kind of stand out as, that's a lot of money. I really spent a lot in photography last year. What's going on? We just noticed, for example, we reviewed our first quarter. I don't want to complicate things for you guys, but my company runs on a different fiscal year than the calendar year. So we were just reviewing our Q1, our first quarter, and my operations manager pointed out to me that our photography expenses were extremely high. It was like $6,500 in the first quarter. And I was like, oh yeah, that is something to red flag, but I will tell you it's because all of our shoots were either canceled or postponed over the pandemic. And then all of a sudden we were able to get into people's houses and photograph. So what would have been spread out over 12 months kind of got jammed into one quarter. So it is what it is. It's fine, but it's something that's worth the conversation. And then look at the expenses and look at the money and where it came in and what would you like to repeat for next year? Like maybe you look at that and you say, well, we invested a lot in marketing last year, but I really think it paid off. Or I hired a publicist. Shoot, that was expensive. But you know what? I'm pretty sure that publicist is responsible for at least 2 or 3 of our jobs because those people said they saw us in a magazine, right? So we want to look at all those different things. Number 3. Sorry, I'm eating grapes. Oh my God, number 3. This is amazing. Like, it's so bananas to me that I never used to do this. Number 3. How much money did you pay yourself this year? I legit never knew how much I paid myself. Like, literally, I didn't know. My husband would be like, oh, how much did you pay yourself this year? I was like, I don't know. I just would draw money. Has anyone done this where you're running your own business? It's just you. You may even share a bank account or not. I don't know. Even if you have a separate bank account, I would just like transfer money to myself. And I would consider them dividends, right? They were shareholder loan or whatever. There's terminology for that, but they were dividends. I would just transfer. Oh, I needed $1,000. Boom, transfer. I think I should pay myself $5,000 this month. Transfer. Oh, I don't think I need to transfer. Like that was my life. To some extent, it still can be. But as a result, I wasn't really paying attention to how much I paid myself. And it was only when I had to file my taxes that my accountant would say, oh, Rebecca, you paid yourself $80,000. And I remember being like, oh, no, I didn't. That's so much money. She's like, well, yeah, that's the transactions going to you from the business equal 80,000 or whatever it was. I was like always shocked. I literally think it was until maybe last year I was still like, oh, I paid myself how much? So that's okay, but maybe don't wait till tax time until you're filing your taxes. Because if many of you probably don't pay yourself through payroll, right? The way a traditional company pays. So it's called an owner's draw or a dividend. And so what happens is you may take the same amount each month, but sometimes it fluctuates, right? Like I mentioned, some months it's higher, some months it's lower. So take the time to review your bank records and calculate how much that you as a business owner actually put into your personal bank account this year. It could show up in your income statement if everything has been documented correctly. But it's really important to see how much you actually took as payment in the form of cash or personal purchases through the year so that you can see the reward for all the hard work. Also, so you can plan ahead and set a goal for next year on how much you want to pay yourself. Did you feel like you were still scraping by trying to make ends meet? Well, maybe you need to give yourself a raise and be intentional about that. And then there's, the trickle-down effect from that is that then maybe you need to up the number of projects or your profit margin or anything like that. So then ask yourself, did you pay yourself more or less than the year before? Again, you have to look at this. And Did you contribute to any family financials? Did you contribute to RSPs? Have you invested any money for your children? Have a look at that. I think it's really something that a lot of us tend to ignore. So that is number 3. Number 4 is to schedule your end of year conversation with your accountant. So I have in the past done mine in January, but I've decided I want to do it in December now because I just like to get ahead of things. But when it comes to tax strategy, there are a few things that need to be done before the end of the year to take advantage of tax savings, especially when you own your own business. So a couple things that, specific things that I can recommend that you will learn from this meeting is that you can find out about corporate taxes, right? If you owe any corporate taxes, how much do you foresee that you will owe? And when will that be due? Also, personal taxes, because they could all be tied in together. And perhaps there's some strategies that you could do now to decrease your tax burden in this calendar year. This is something that an accountant can help you with. I cannot help you with it, but I do know it's powerful to have that conversation. But if you're able to review your numbers first, it'll make that conversation go a lot smoother and you'll spend less money in their time. Okay, number 5. You'll probably want to make end-of-year contributions to an RRSP or a retirement savings account. I know in the U.S. you have 401ks or an IRA. In Canada, it's RRSPs and then there's the I don't know. There's all kinds of places you can put your money to save for your retirement. But if you have the money, it might be time to make those last-minute contributions, right? In the early years of my business, I didn't save anything. I didn't put anything into retirement savings. They do say that a good rule of thumb is to save 10 to 20% of your income. I can tell you I've never done that. That's just crazy to me because I'm still trying to figure out my financials. I tend to only draw out of my business the minimum that I need. I'm one of those people that's kind of in it for the long haul. And so I really just only take what I need. And the rest I reinvest in the company, in the people, in the marketing, and whatever I need to hopefully grow my business to be bigger so that one day I can really pay myself. But I recognize that it's still important to contribute to your retirement. So make those contributions. 6, if you have any overdue accounts or accounts payable, make sure you get those all sorted before the end of the year, wherever possible. This is the type of thing that you can kind of drag on. It will help keep your books tidy and clean. If you owe any taxes, if you have to return, in Canada, we have something like HST. Do you owe installments on HST? Make sure all of that is taken care of. Okay. Consider, now this only applies if you have employees or contract workers, but I would say plan for any end of year bonuses. So if you want to give bonuses to the members of your team, whether they be freelance and they've gone the extra mile for you or your employees, you need to plan for that financially to make sure that you have enough money in the bank to pay them, because that will also come out of your expenses. Then I would suggest, and this is my last sort of financial review tip before I get into the next sort of leg of it, is set your sales goal for the upcoming year. And this is something I'm going to dive into a little bit more in part 2 of this podcast, but I really think it's important to have a sales goal, a financial goal, because it's the most important number every business owner needs to know. It's important to calculate this number each and every year. You know, what is enough for you to pay yourself and keep your business running? And if you've never set a sales goal before, it can be a little daunting, but all you need to do is reverse engineer your number, right? So you need to figure out what's your personal salary that you want, plus the tax savings, and then plus any expenses for your company, right? Plus perhaps any money that you may want to keep in the company. And then all those numbers together should equal your total sales goal needs. I can't tell you what your expenses are. They can vary from company to company. I can tell you that on average, my expenses for 1 year of running my business, they've averaged between $300,000 and $500,000 expenses. So I think maybe it's more. No, that's payroll. No, I don't know. Guys, I should know this. The reality is the expenses go up the more projects you have, right? And the more work that you have coming in. But I would say set your sales goals. So if you look at your year and you're like, we did $500,000 in sales, like top line sales before any expenses or any cost of goods. That was pretty good. The year before I did 250. So wow, what a jump. I doubled my revenue. Well, what does that mean for next year? Is it realistic that I will double my revenue? Maybe not. Maybe I can set a conservative goal to hit 600,000 with a stretch goal of 750. I like having goals and stretch goals because I like to set goals that are achievable, smart goals, right? They are something that is realistic that I can achieve and I can break down how to get there. And if you listen to my podcast on goal setting, please go ahead, or if you haven't, go listen to it. But I talk about, I was out of breath today. What's going on? What I like about it is I talk about how important it is to set a goal and then break it down into the milestones, right? So, but you want to set a goal that is a SMART goal, that is something that you can achieve and you can do in a timely manner, right? So when you set that sales goal, think about like how many projects it's going to take to get you to that goal. There's no point in setting these like super crazy lofty goals like I want to do $2 million in sales next year when last year you only did 500,000. I mean, sure, anything's possible, but let's be realistic, guys. We want to set goals that we can achieve because that helps us gain momentum. And if you have a stretch goal, which is a little bit higher, then at least you can push yourself. If you feel like halfway through the year you're getting there, you can push yourself a little bit more. All right. Now I want to talk about the project side of things. So here's what I do to review the finances at the end of the year when it comes to our projects. And this is really powerful. This is the first half of the conversation with projects, and I'll talk about the second half when I get into part 2 of my year in review. So I'm just opening my iPad here. Okay, so what I like to do is I can print out through the program that we use every project and the total sales for that project. So every project that I had in 2021, and I can print out and see all the top sales. Then I take 3 highlighters, 3 colors. I like to, this is probably not something an accountant would ever do, but this is what I do. And I usually do it on my iPad. I probably could draft a sheet in Google Docs or whatever, or Excel. I just screenshot it or I save it to my iPad and I highlight it or print it out, to be honest. So 3 colors. I have the highest sales earners, the medium range sales earners, and the low sales. And it's up to you what that looks like. So low sales for me in the past has been a project that brought in under $10,000 in design fees. A mid-range project was one that brought in between $10,000 and $30,000 in design fees. And then the high range would have been $30,000 plus in design fees. So that's sort of how I quantified it. You can decide what is small, medium, and large for you, but I suggest you pick a different color for each and you go through and you highlight. So when I did this exercise last year, I went through and I highlighted, I used a bright purple for the high, and I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of my total projects were in the high, and then the orange I used for the middle. I had 1. And then I had 2 projects at the low. So that was pretty awesome. I realized, wow, I'm getting higher. So I had 5 projects, 5, 1 and 2. And then I also separately do a 4th color, which is anything that was literally just a consultation. So anyone who hired me maybe for a consultation and it didn't go through, or it's still on hold, they haven't actually solidified if they're going to hire us for full design, but they just did a consultation. So then I highlight that in a different color. I like doing this. It's a great visual to see like where are we going. And over the years, you can start to see a trend and you can start to see as your fees go up. If you're raising your fees according to what you're worth, then you'll see this, but it starts to go up. And then what I like to do is look at the margin. So hopefully you use an accounting program like Design Docs or QuickBooks that can show you your margin. But it's really, if you don't, then maybe you can figure out a way to craft it yourself. But I think it's really helpful to see how much money you made, because and then I highlight that too based on small, medium, and large. And what's super fascinating is sometimes the big projects are actually not the biggest, don't have the biggest margin. So for example, I had a project that was a mid-range project, right? It was between $10,000 and $30,000 in fees, but I highlighted it as the highest margin. So I actually made, it was my second top earning project, and it was only a middle in the overall size of the project. So then I thought, that's interesting, right? So you do this exercise. Then I had another one that was one of my top earners for project, highlighted in bright purple. But then when I looked at the margin, it was one of my lowest margins. So it's really got me thinking, like, what's going on? Just because they're the biggest project didn't mean they were bringing the biggest margin, the most amount of money over on the goods that we're selling. So when you start to do this exercise, I highly recommend you do it. Then look at the colors, see where things don't add up, and ask yourself why. Assess why. What I learned from this exercise, and I keep learning it year after year, is that we make the best margins when we do the bulk of the project is decorating. There's no surprise there that we make money on reselling furniture, right? So what that means is we are able to make more money when your project has decorating. And so as a result, moving into the next calendar year, it helps me reframe our marketing and plan our marketing goal to attract more decorating projects. There's a purpose we do this. We don't just look at the numbers to know the numbers and say, oh, yay, wow, look at me, I made $1 million. No. I mean, it's nice to see the number, but it's more about what can you learn from it and what do you take away. So I highly recommend you do that exercise with all the projects. And if you don't know all the numbers, it's okay. I highly recommend, though, that for next year, you try to find a program that will help you track this. Something like a QuickBooks or a Mydoma or Design Docs. We use Design Docs, but it's something that I think is, or maybe even like, there's tons of programs. I think that at the very least, if you know what you charged in design fees for projects, you could categorize them that way, right? So you know how much you charged for Project Silver Birch in design fees, write that down. You know how much you charged for Project Jarvis in design fees, write that down. And then you can start to look and group similarly sized projects, okay? That's it. I'm going to leave you with that because in part 2, I'm going to get into understanding so much more about the projects that you've worked on and what lights you up. And I'm really hoping that in part 2, we can talk about reviewing your year from a more of a vision perspective. Now that you kind of understand the finances and the numbers, it's really, really key to be able to look at how you're doing and if it aligns with this future vision of yourself and where are you going to set your goals moving into the new year. So get to work, look at the numbers. I know it feels scary. It feels daunting. Let me know in the Designer Meetup Facebook group if there is something that I've missed. Is there some element of financials that you don't understand or you'd like me to talk about? I'm certainly not the expert, but I can share what I know. And if we can figure this out, Vera and I don't want to promise anything. I want to be able to give you guys a download, but at the time of recording, I don't know if we can do it. So check the show notes because I'd like to be able to give you a download with our financial checklist. So that you can go ahead and do these things in your business. All right. Happy crunching of the numbers, and I'll see you soon.